Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Fischer Files Report. I'm May-Chang. Last September, Bryan Fischer, Director of Issue Analysis for American Family Association and radio host, told his listeners only Christianity has the constitutional protection of the free exercise of religion under the First Amendment.
Counterfeit religions, alternative religions to Christianity, have no First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion. Mormonism, they call themselves by the name of Christ, but it is not an orthodox Christian network of churches. It just is not.
Broadcasting live from the Value Voters Summit on October 7th, Bryan Fischer was joined by Texas Baptist pastor Robert Jeffress on his Focal Point radio show. Jeffress and Fischer were discussing whom they would prefer in the White House. Fischer had made it clear for some time that he and the AFA support Texas Governor Rick Perry for the GOP nomination for president. Here is the exchange between the two men.
And I believe, as I look out at the candidates there, it's going to come down probably to a choice of either Governor Perry or Governor Romney. And I believe those of us who are evangelical Christians need to support and encourage true born-again followers of Christ to be president.
So for you, Dr. Jeffress, just to probe you a little bit on that, the fact that Governor Romney comes from a non-traditional, non-historically orthodox tradition, that is a matter of concern for you.
Oh, it's a huge matter of concern, and the Southern Baptist Convention, which is the largest Protestant convention in the nation, has labeled Mormonism as a cult. And so we need to understand it is not Christianity, it is not a branch of Christianity, it is a cult.
Fischer never asked Jeffress for clarification or offered any pushback whatsoever. Shortly after that exchange, Jeffress endorsed Perry. The media went nuts, making the situation even more awkward. Fischer was scheduled to speak the next night directly following Governor Mitt Romney, who opened with this.
Our values ennoble the citizen, and they strengthen the nation. We should remember that decency and civility are values too. One of the speakers who will follow me today has crossed that line, I think. Poisonous language doesn't advance our cause. It's never softened a single heart nor changed a single mind. The blessings of faith carry the responsibility of civil and respectful debate. The task before us is to focus on the conservative beliefs and the values that unite us. Let no agenda narrow our vision or drive us apart. We have important work to accomplish.
Back in the AFA studio a few days later, after getting some blowback, Fischer was clearly upset and tried to defend himself.
What he did was completely and utterly lacking in class. It was tacky, it was impolite, it was rude. Nothing but affection and nothing but regard for the Mormon friends who share our common values when it comes to public policy. I lived in Idaho for 29 years. Many close friends that are Mormons. I had, they accused me of being bigoted toward Mormons. I had a Mormon on my board of my pro-family organization. A Mormon was on my board.
Want to know how Bryan Fischer really views the Mormon religion? Well, you're about to find out. In a recording I recently dug up of one of Fischer's last sermons as pastor of the church he founded, Community Church of the Valley, Fischer makes very clear his views on the LDS faith.
And so Paul says those who teach the Scriptures are to have nothing to do with godless myths. And I think about our friends in the LDS Church who are building their entire view of religion around a fairy tale, which is what the Book of Mormon is. It's a novel, made-up story about Native Americans in the early years on this continent. And yet they have believed this tale, this old wives' tale, and this godless myth.
3 weeks later, Fischer gave his last sermon and abruptly left CCV over an intense power struggle between him and his board of directors, the subject of which is still unclear. 2 months later, Fischer incorporated the Idaho Values Alliance. Remember when he said this?
I had a Mormon on my board of my pro-family organization. A Mormon was on my board.
Bryan Fischer never had a real governing board of directors for the Idaho Values Alliance. That is just another one of his fantasies. According to public records with the Idaho Secretary of State, from 2005 to 2008, Bryan Fischer's so-called board consisted of only his wife, Debbie, and his daughter, Jana. When you consider Fischer's power struggle with his last board, and that he believes women should not have any authority over men, it appears to be by design. There was no office, no staff, no board. Fischer operated the IVA out of his home. It was just him, a website, and a mailing list. There was never a Mormon board member, he claims now in a desperate effort to look good.
And I think about our friends in the LDS Church who are building their entire view of religion around a fairy tale, which is what the Book of Mormon is. It's a novel, made-up story about Native Americans in the early years on this continent. And yet they have believed this tale, this old wives' tale, and this godless myth.
I have done nothing but speak the truth about Mormonism. My problem with Mitt Romney is not that he's Mormon, it's that he is not Mormon enough.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Fischer Files Report. I'm Jody May-Chang. For more information, please visit thefischerfiles.com.
I've got a history with Governor Romney, frankly, that goes back to his campaign for the presidency in 2008. I raised some questions about him when he came to Idaho when I was working with the Idaho Values Alliance back in 2008. So I think I've sort of been on his hit list